Welcome back to MVM. Today we have a preview for a brand new game from a brand new publisher. This one is called Mind Management and is based on a comic book. This is a deduction game of hidden movement, and you're trying to find out where the other player is.
Yeah, you're going to divide up into two teams. You're going to have one player that's actually playing as Mind Management, moving around a board, trying to recruit agents to their side. Meanwhile, the other team takes on the role of rogue agents fighting back against Mind Management. For those who have read the comic book series, this is very thematic. But for those who have not, this kind of serves as an entry point into the series, and this game itself kind of acts like a recruitment tool into Mind Management.
Now, there's a lot of things going on with this game, so we'll first start off with what you're going to get in the game. This is a pseudo-legacy game, and it's not really a true legacy game. However, one of the two sides wins, the other team is going to open up an envelope, and in that envelope is going to be new components, possibly new ways to play the game. So as you play additional games, new envelopes are going to be opened up, allowing one of those two losers to get additional things you're going to add. So as the course of the game plays out, you're going to have a lot of new rules, a lot of new characters, a lot of new things that are going to happen within the game itself.
Yeah, and they're calling this the shift system, which this was designed for this game, but it sounds like they have plans to carry this over in the future. And you're going to be able to choose from all of those envelopes and kind of customize your game experience to how you want to play it each time you sit down.
Now, we are playing one game past the training mission, meaning we're playing the full game right now as it would stand. We're playing 1 versus 1, meaning that I'm going to control Mind Management and you're controlling all 4 of the rogue agents. Anytime you play this game, you have to play all 4 of those rogue agents because they're trying to capture one and one only token on the board that will be hidden from the other player. Also, we're playing with all the starting movement cards and action cards in the game. Again, there's going to be new cards that are going to be inflected into the game as you play out. My goal as Mind Management is to recruit people on the board. And these people are hidden at various locations on this board that you see here that is broken into squares in rows and columns. Each of these rows and columns is going to have 2 icons on them. So when I look at the board, I can look here and see it has a fountain and umbrellas. While I look over here and it's got this trolley type car and an eye. All of these are going to be represented with cards that I will draw at the start of the game, being 3 of them, telling me where I can recruit those agents. I need 12 of these agents by the end of the day.
Yeah, and my goal as the rogue agents is try to deduce which symbols he's looking for. As the game is unfolding, I'm going to be able to take several of my actions that will help me add clues to this logic puzzle. I'll be able to start to deduce which symbols he's going for and be able to look at the board and kind of try to predict where the recruiter is heading. However, the recruiter is never on the board. All of their movement is done on a piece of paper that they have hidden.
Yeah, speaking of piece of paper, it is this board that you see here in front of me. This is a board that's going to represent this exact map area for area. At the start of the game, I'm going to pick any one location and write the number 1 on that location. That is my hidden starting location, and I have this shield to kind of block that out from you. Then I'm going to be able to move 4 additional times, collecting icons as I go. So I'm going to write those numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in any location orthogonally from my starting location. Each time that I recruit a person, I'm going to take one of these recruit markers and lay it right here in the 1 through 5 segment at the bottom of the board. That's going to give the other team kind of an idea of maybe the type of icons I'm trying to collect, but they don't really know where I'm moving at that point. Then to start the game, I'm going to move 1 more time into 6 o'clock, again writing a new number, but not placing any recruits on that area. Why? This is very important. Anytime you take actions in the game as Mind Management, you're only going to reveal when you've recruited people at these red alarm areas. So there's going to be some times when I'm going to move, collect, but not reveal them until a later time.
Yeah, and the reason this is important is because while the recruiter's taking their actions, the Mind Management rogue agents are trying to deduce, like I said, by using these cards that are in front of them. And we are using the basic cards like Jeremy said. You'll be able to upgrade these potentially with some of those shift envelopes. But the goal of these characters is to move around the board, and you're going to be able to move up to 2 spaces with any of your tokens orthogonally, and then take one of the various actions. Now, the key action you're going to be taking a lot is the action called Ask, where you look at any feature that's on your board. For example, I could say coffee shop if I was in an area with the coffee cup. It is up to the other player, Jeremy in this case, to actually tell me if he has been to a coffee cup during the course of the game. I don't get to know when he was there or what he was doing there, but I get to know he was there. And I can take these little white tokens and they give you a dry erase marker, and you can use these tokens as notations. For example, if he moved to a coffee cup early, and that was his first movement, I could put a 1 on that coffee cup. I don't know if he recruited there, but when he gets to one of those red stop signs and shows me that he got a recruit, I can start to figure out, hey, maybe it was from that coffee shop. I don't know. Now, these tokens are all double-sided. So once you write information on one side, for example, you're making a guess, when you confirm it, you can actually flip it over. You can make more notes or erase whatever's on there. So asking is kind of the most common action you're going to take, but there's another equally important action, and that is reveal. You're going to have the opponent place these step tokens on the board. They have to put the step token somewhere they have been. So for example, Jeremy might place that step token there. If I can get to that space with an agent, I can then ask him to reveal that step token. If he does so, he then has to tell me exactly what time he was at that location. So this is when you can start to kind of make a path. If I realize he was here right at 6, maybe that's pretty close to his starting spot. But you're going to have to be placing these footprints around, spreading out your agents, which is why it's kind of key to use all 4, because you will have to cover a lot of ground to figure out where the recruiter is going.
So the main action of Mind Management player is to move those 1 spaces at a time, trying to collect those recruits by going to those icons that he has in his starting hand. Now, there are some other things that I have to be aware of, as well as the rogue agents in the game. That's the mayhem. There are 5 locations on the board that are going to have barriers that I cannot move through and that you cannot move through. So we have to be aware of those at all times during the game as well. There's something else called the Immortals, and this is what you're going to play with starting with the base game. There are 4 Immortals that I'm going to control within the game. These are placed randomly in different locations throughout the board. Now I can use those as well. These are going to allow me to move in diagonal locations, which I typically can't do. So these can move in all different types of locations. My goal with these Immortals is to do a couple things. One, to block your ability to ask. So if you're in a location where one of my Immortals are, you can't ask about anything that my Immortals are in. So if you're in this location here and you ask about coffee cups, well, that guy's in a coffee cup. You can't even ask about things that are over here, like a bus and this little trolley, because my Immortals are blocking those. So you have to push those guys out of my locations. The other cool thing about my Immortals is if I have 2 Immortals on 2 different locations and they each share the same icon that matches one of my 2 down here in my Immortal recruiting area, I can, for instance, say I have 2 guys in coffee cups. I'm going to place one of these recruits in coffee cups up here on the board, remove this card from the game, and replace it with a new one. This is another way I can get to those 12 recruits fast. Now, the trick here for me is that he's going to know that these cards down here, as well as the cards that I burned through, are not the ones in my hand.
Right, playing with the Immortals adds an entire different new layer to that deduction, because like Jeremy said, you'll be able to deduce because he's also trying to move to those recruitment spots. And like he mentioned, the only way I can get rid of them is to push them out, which is another action I can take. If I'm on the same space with one of those agents, I can actually push them out. There's no way to defeat them, as their name would imply, or as if you're familiar with the comic book series, you know that these Immortals will not go down. They're going to keep coming, so you have to keep pushing them away. But I do get another action that lets me shake down an Immortal. If I can manage to be in the same location with them, I can shake them down for information. I get to predict what I think one of the 3 cards in Jeremy's hand is. If I'm correct, and for example, I guess Tiki Bar, and it's in his hand, he has to discard that card from his hand, cross off all Tiki Bars he hasn't already moved to, and he can no longer recruit from Tiki Bars for the rest of the game.
Yeah, speaking of crossing off, what he's mentioning here is at the start of the game, when I get these 3 cards, I'm going to circle every location that matches these cards. This is going to help me kind of plan out my movements throughout the game. Now, it's very easy to explain the turn structure in the game. It's going to start off by me doing the basic setup that I mentioned, and then moving to that 6th hour. This is going to move the time marker up 1 space. It's also going to allow me to take 1 action. The actions in the game are going to be across the bottom of the board. I have a spot here called Other, which I don't know, which is probably going to be opened up later in the game, but I do have my Move Immortal or my Step, which will allow me to move my hidden agent on the board. Anytime I move, I'm allowed to, of course, recruit people if I land in one of the locations with the circle on my board that match up to those particular icons on my cards. Then I'm going to move that time marker up 1 space. If it ever moves up to a space with one of these red things, that is when I'm actually going to reveal how many people I moved over the last 2 turns and recruited. This is going to give the other player some ideas on maybe the location I moved to, especially if he knows some of the cards that I may possibly have in my hand. Now it's going to go to the agent after I've taken my one action. They're going to pick any two of their agents and move and take an action.
Yeah, and as you're doing these actions and as you're deducing where they're moving or where they're making them discard cards, because what you're doing is giving them less chances to gain agents, also forcing them to move to some other icons in a much narrower search. Your goal is just to either block that player in so that they can't make any more legal moves, which is a lot harder than it sounds, or to figure out where they are and capture them. Because if you are ever in the same space with the Mind Management Recruiter, you can choose to just use the capture action. If you're correct, you win the game.
Yeah.
If you're not, well, tough luck, you lost an action there.
And as you mentioned, movement is very difficult for me. If we didn't mention this already, it's very important to note that as the mind management player, I can only go to each one of these locations once. So I can never move through a spot that I've been to previously in the game. That's extremely important because that net will start to cover, your ability to create that net will start to cover areas on the board where I cannot go to anymore. Now there's one spot on the board we probably should mention as well, and that is these two locations. These are unique locations that once you move into them, you can exit diagonally. This is the only place on the board. So this kind of gives me some flexibility to move in specific areas and you some flexibility as well.
Yeah, and in addition, the Mind Management Recruiter will unlock some cards over the course of the game that gives them even more special movement, like the ability to just skip a couple spaces or move clear across the board. A lot of different things that will throw off the rogue agents because tracking those movements can become very difficult. You don't have enough turns in the game to do everything you want, because one thing we haven't mentioned yet is if you run out the time and you get all the way to the 1600 marker on the board, then yeah, the Mind Management Recruiter wins. He manages to escape after recruiting his agents.
Yeah, and it can't be overmentioned the ability at the end of the game to inflect more information into the game. The loser of the game is going to get one of these packets. There's going to be 5 for each side, possibly more with stretch goals when the Kickstarter happens. These envelopes are going to allow the losing player to open it up and add more cards, add more tokens to the game. They're going to allow their ability to do things a little bit better. So as the game progresses over multiple sessions, you're going to have multiple envelopes on each side. They're going to allow them to do more things and have more flexibility with that movement. So that is Mind Management, a 2 to 5 player game. If you like deduction games, which I absolutely love, I think this is really going to hit that sweet spot for you as a gamer. If you have any questions about the Kickstarter, make them in the comments below. Subscribe to us, follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do, and we will catch you guys next time.